Oh my God, Anita.
Good morning. How are you today? I'm Willie Bragg. Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I hope all of y'all are doing well. I didn't do a video yesterday because I'm still recovering from my little bug that I had. I'm like 95% better, but another day I'll be back on track. Suffice to say, what's going on right now with Russia and Ukraine and how crazy people are getting and overreacting here in the United States after the billions of dollars we're giving to the government of the Ukraine to fight the big bad Ruskies. And I want to make it clear that I don't approve of any country invading another country. I want to make that clear from the get-go. I don't care what country it is. I don't approve any country invading another country. But when you are opposed to trying to get yourself, if you're opposed to a country getting itself involved in another conflict across the ocean, you're going to be accused of supporting the other side. And that's exactly what's going on. So anybody who opposes this war in the Ukraine, opposes U.S. getting themselves quagmire into this conflict and getting themselves into a confrontation with Russia are called pro-Russia propagandists or pro-Russia or just they're called pro-Putin. I mean, this shit started in the election of 2016 when they claimed that Donald Trump was in bed with Vladimir Putin. And when Donald Trump won in 2016, it just never ended. He was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. Jill Stein was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. And then they said Bernie Sanders was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. And then it went on to Tulsi Gabbard being a puppet of Vladimir Putin. And then down into Jimmy Dore being a puppet of Vladimir Putin, to Tucker Carlson being a puppet of Vladimir Putin. You even had Mark Levin on Fox News claiming that there is a pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party. And then you have Hillary Clinton, and you have people on, corporate Democrats, talking about people who are trying to fight the good fight, progressives who are trying to fight the good fight, calling them pro-Russia, pro-Putin. So there is a consensus, two-party consensus and it's the new neoconservatism to demonize anything, your opponents and anybody who is outside and think outside the box as being pro-Russia and pro-Putin. And that's what it comes down to. And for some on the legitimate left, the real left that kind of plays along with a team, with the brother team, with the Democrats going along with this, please don't do that, because they're going to go after y'all too at some point. What I want to do, I'm going to play a segment from Tucker Carlson, because it is relevant. It is relevant to play, because and I'm going to make it clear, I don't agree with Tucker Carlson on like 95% of most things, but he is correct in this case to call this out about the smearing, because what they have done is now the president of the Ukraine has decided to go after, specifically go after U.S. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, to go after Glenn Greenwald, to go after Tulsi Gabbard, and to go about doing this. So, what's going on is he wants to talk about this. So I'm going to play the segment, and then after I play the segment, I'm going to share some words. Share some of my take on this too. So give me a moment here and we will get started. All right, let's see here. We will get started momentarily. Let's see. All right. Come on. Okay. Got a little bit of buffering. There you go.
So we being the Biden administration, we have sent billions to Ukraine to protect their borders, even as we have opened our own to the world. Why are we doing this exactly? Well, as Joe Biden has told us repeatedly, doing his Winston Churchill imitation, we're doing it to protect democracy. But of course, the irony here is Ukraine is not a democracy in any recognizable sense. The Ukrainian government has banned media outlets that are hostile to it. They've also shut down opposition parties. They arrested the main opposition leader. That's a democracy? So because we allowed that to happen, in fact, we funded it all, now the Ukrainian government has decided that they can impose censorship in our country. The Ukrainian government has issued a blacklist of so-called Russian propagandists, Americans. That list includes Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, Tulsi Gabbard, who's serving in the U.S. military, and Glenn Greenwald, among many others. So we thought we'd speak to a couple of them. Starting off tonight, Glenn Greenwald. He's an independent journalist. His work is on Substack, among other places. Glenn, thanks so much for coming on. So you're being blacklisted by the Ukrainian government, which is a beacon of democracy. Tell us how this works.
Yeah, I thought President Zelensky had a war to run. Apparently, he has a lot of time to watch the Morning Joe show on MSNBC, where they sit around for hours accusing everybody they want to discredit of being a Kremlin agent and teaching American liberals how to do the same. It's easy to mock, but it's actually quite outrageous, Tucker. The Ukrainians have a conflict with this neighboring country in Russia. They're totally free to pursue whatever war policies they want. They can fight Russia for the next 10 years if they choose, but that's not what they're doing. They're begging and, in a sense, demanding that other countries, including my own, the United States, provide them with a seemingly endless supply of weapons and money, which means we not only have the right, but the obligation to debate that and ask whether that's in the interest of the American people to do. And so for Zelensky to essentially try and export the repression he's imposed in his own country here to the United States by shutting down debate and accusing those of us asking questions of being Kremlin agents or Russian propagandists takes incredible gall, while he's also demanding that we turn over all our money and weapons to him at the same time.
This is the guy George W. Bush described as the George Washington of our age. I haven't heard really anybody in Washington say a single word about this.
Yeah, from the beginning, as you know as well as anybody, Tucker, there was a very concerted effort to eliminate all space to ask any questions. Anyone who asked the question of whether we should do more to prevent the war diplomatically, like Tulsi Gabbard, or whether we should risk our own money and a potential nuclear exchange with Russia over Ukrainian border disputes got called a Kremlin agent or a Russian asset, and this is the strategy that they're using to try and prevent us in the United States from exercising our freedom to debate what role our government should play in that war.
Exactly. In the name of democracy, they shut it down. Glenn Greenwald, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
So Tulsi Gabbard is also on this blacklist. She's also someone the Ukrainian government says should be censored. She serves in the U.S. military. She served in the United States Congress. She ran for president. Now she's joining us, and we're happy that she is. Congressman, thank you so much for coming on. What's your reaction to finding yourself on this blacklist?
I see the hypocrisy, Tucker. The hypocrisy of this blacklist is, and frankly, why the American people should care about this is the Biden-Harris administration and the Washington elite from both parties are continuing to be willing to impoverish the American people and people around the world and push us closer and closer to nuclear war and Holocaust, all to protect democracy and defeat autocracy in Ukraine. And all of this is happening as the Ukrainian president is frankly exposing that there is no democracy in Ukraine. You mentioned a few examples of some of the things that he's doing in silencing any dissenting voices, imprisoning political opponents, banning all political activity from the 11 opposition parties, frankly, taking control of all national media under his unified information policy. And now he's turning his sights on Americans, not only myself and others you've mentioned, but a sitting U.S. senator. The danger of this, again, goes to the cost that our leaders are willing to exact as they continue this facade of a push for so-called democracy and defeat autocracy. The whole thing is so hypocritical, and we need to hold our leaders accountable for it.
I couldn't agree more. I have to ask you, since you served in Washington for years, I know you're not generally aligned with Steve Bannon, at least in the public mind, but you watched him get convicted last week of contempt of Congress for not cooperating with the January 6th committee, while many others, Eric Holder, Lois Lerner, have not been put on trial for ignoring subpoenas from the Congress. What's your reaction to this?
It shows the double standard in Washington, but more dangerously, it shows how this administration is so willingly weaponizing our Department of Justice to act as their own personal political hit squad and going after political opponents and turning a blind eye to people on their own team. This is incredibly dangerous because when you look at what's at the heart of our democracy, it is the rule of law. It is our ability as Americans to be able to trust that these public institutions are serving the public interest and not favoring whoever's in power versus who's not in power. That no matter our political affiliation, how we use our free speech, the color of our skin, how we worship, none of these things should matter because we should have faith that our justice system will treat us equally and fairly across the board. This weaponization of the Department of Justice is incredibly dangerous and sets a dangerous precedent that undermines this very foundation of our democracy.
You served in the Congress as a Democrat. When the Washington Post started attacking you, I started paying very close attention to what you were saying. Why do they dislike us? Because you're a person of principle. That's why, and they hate that. I appreciate your coming on tonight. Tulsi Gabbard, as always.
Thank you.
Subscribe.
Actually, Tucker, the reason why they started attacking Tulsi Gabbard is because she destroyed Kamala Harris's campaign very early. And she impressed me very much when she did that. It was always one of my favorite moments in the 2019-2020 primary season, her destroying Kamala Harris on stage. I will always appreciate that. Anyway, let's talk about this blacklist. And they didn't interview Rand Paul. Y'all know my position on Rand Paul. Terrible on economics, great on foreign policy, and sometimes good on domestic civil liberty issues, depending on what the issues, what they are. So we'll talk about him some other time. But since Tucker Carlson interviewed Glenn Greenwald and Tulsi Gabbard, we'll discuss those two. I mean, the fact is that Glenn Greenwald's been pretty much shunned by the so-called liberal media, the MSNBCs of the world, the CNNs. I don't remember if he was on CNN much, but the MSNBCs of the world and all of that. He's been shunned by them, and he's been while he was kind of favored by the liberal elite at one point. Now he's kind of seen as a right winger because he goes on Tucker Carlson a couple of times a month. You see him, I guess, sometimes as much as 2 or 3 times a week, something like that. But the thing about it is that he's always been anti-war, and he's always been a staunch proponent of free speech, right to privacy, that sort of thing. The sort of thing that was like very classic about the American Civil Liberties Union for many years before they gotten super woke during the age of Trump. I don't know where the ACLU is right now. I mean, I know that ACLU goes through some self observations every now and then, but thing is that Glenn Greenwald has been shunned, and we're talking about a man that lives in Brazil, who is married, who is a Jewish man that Ben Shapiro called an anti-Semite, which he is not. He doesn't practice the religion, but I mean, he's Jewish, but he's married to a brown-skinned man in Brazil, David Miranda, who belongs to a Trotskyist political party called the Party for Socialism and Liberty in the Brazilian Congress. He's a member of Congress. And so to call Glenn Greenwald a right-winger, or even worse, call him a white supremacist or call him a neo-Nazi is ridiculous. We're talking about a man that was assaulted by a radio talk show host in Brazil who was arguably Brazil's Rush Limbaugh. We're talking about a man whose life is threatened by President Jair Bolsonaro. And for yesterday's progressive allies of Glenn Greenwald to shun him and to say he's like the worst of the worst, a lot of these people who are doing that associate themselves with the corporatist right in this country. And how dare they go around and accuse Glenn Greenwald of these things? Glenn Greenwald's not perfect. Glenn Greenwald's taking positions that I disagree with. But Glenn Greenwald is by no means no right-winger. He's been consistently anti-war. I mean, and you ever hear him? And he hasn't changed on some of these issues. I mean, he's always been critical to the Israeli government against the Palestinian people. He is not what you will call a right-winger by any stretch of the imagination. But a lot of these same people who would do that don't have a problem with George W. Bush calling Volodymyr Zelensky, where George W. Bush called him the George Washington of our age. The fact that George W. Bush called President Zelensky the George Washington of our age should give us all a fucking pause at this point. I mean, honestly, anything that comes out of George W. Bush's mouth, you should just refute it. But anyway, I mean, it's ridiculous. And now let's get to Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I like to say this about Tulsi Gabbard. Again, she's not perfect either. Nobody's perfect. But, she was raised in a socially conservative household, Hindu household when growing up, and she had some cringy reactionary views when she was growing up that she evolved in, and they're trying to make her out like she's some kind of a right wing. They're trying to make her out like she's some kind of Marjorie Taylor Greene figure or something, and she doesn't even come close. I mean, I know that she's not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but still, even now, she's much ideologically closer to AOC's good politics today than she would ever be to anything horrible by Marjorie Taylor Greene. So, just to go and attack her. And Tulsi Gabbard is still correct on foreign policy. She is still correct on foreign policy. She's been warning people about, an impending new Cold War and she turned out to be correct. She's talking about we keep doing this, we're going to end up in a possible nuclear exchange. We're on the cusp of World War III, simply because Hillary Clinton had her feelings hurt because she lost the 2016 election, and she wanted to blame somebody other than her silly self for losing the 2016 election. So she got the entire fucking Democratic Party convinced pretty much that Vladimir Putin put Donald Trump into the White House. And Donald Trump is not smart enough to be controlled by Vladimir Putin. I mean, if that was the case, Vladimir Putin would know that Donald Trump will fuck it up and give himself away. I don't believe that. In fact, if anything, the United States became much more hawkish toward Russia under Trump. And the Democrats assisted Donald Trump in doing so. They gave him more money for military spending than he asked for. They gave him more power in national security surveillance and things like that than he even asked for. So, I mean, you know, and they want to go and be like Trump this and Trump that and Trump derangement syndrome this and Trump derangement syndrome that. What? Trump is bad news in many, many ways. He's bad news. I mean, he's bad news, but I mean, like the Amazing Atheist said, he's also the clown shoes at someone's funeral. And so and you know, he's so incompetent that you know, yeah, he did try to he sort of tried to take over the government with the insurrection, but come on now, he's so incompetent. It was never going to happen. I mean, it would never happen because the U.S. military, they know what a clown he is in that regard. I mean, and all of that. But there are far worse people than Trump, honestly, at the end of the day. And Ron DeSantis is worse than Trump. So, you know, when you hear Bill Maher sitting there talking about he will feel comfortable with Ron DeSantis, no. Yeah, like Crystal Ball said, and Kyle Kalinske said recently, the Ron DeSantis would try to take over the U.S. government, but he would do it in a George W. Bush 2000 coup sort of way. He would do it in a more intelligent way that's more legit and more presidential and all of that. You know, he wouldn't just grab it like that. He would just use legal channels and do what I guess you would call a bloodless coup. But anyway, I'm kind of pontificating right there. We're in an age of new McCarthyism, and this whole I'm just cautioning everybody to if there's anything. If you're worried, don't worry about this being smeared as pro-Russia, because this being smeared as pro-Russia is bullshit. And I'm not pro-Russia. I mean, I'm not anti-Russia, but I'm not pro-Russia. I mean, what I mean is that, but I am an honest person. And, you know, the thing about it is, Russia actually did the United States a favor a decade ago. You want to know why we don't have an ISIS problem now in the year 2022? Russia took care of ISIS. He took care of our dirty work. Iran, Russia, and Syria took care of that dirty work called ISIS. But we have people who thinks like John Bolton, who wants to go and associate and back up the bad guys, you know. And I'm not being partisan. Look at Hillary Clinton. She basically turned the most successful, prosperous country in Africa, Libya, into a slave state today. This is the two-party neocon, neoliberal consensus dystopia that we live under. And, you know, and if you think outside the box, you're going to get smeared as pro-Russia, and you're going to get smeared as all kinds of things. You're going to get smeared you'll get smeared as if you're on the right, you're going to smear your opponents as a socialist or a communist or whatever. And if you're on the fake liberal left, you're going to smear your opponent as a white nationalist, as an alt-rightist, or what have you, and both sides accuse each other of this back and forth and all of this, which is why we got to also end this two-party system dystopia that we're in. We need to end this two-party system and replace it with a multi-party system to get out of this electoral dystopia, because we're having to be forced to choose between dog shit and cat shit every fucking 2 years. Anyway, that's enough of me right there. I'm going to go on this nice little healthy chat line here. And I did reply earlier, but I will say, Al Tyrell said, the bug is going around. It's good to see you getting better. Speedy recovery to you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Hot Retarded Chick says, kick it. Hey, I'm glad to see you here. I'm glad to see you up at this late hour too. She's pear-shaped. I know who you're talking about. So let's see. Do we have any more? Hold on a second. Do we have any more chat? Oh, AOC. Yeah. Oh, and Omar. Oh boy. Let's see here. I'm smoking sativa momoa tonight. Mimosa. Sorry. I am going to go make myself a hot cup of tea and take a quick nap in a few minutes, because I got to get my car serviced in the morning. It's an hour's drive where I had to go get my free oil change. Otherwise, I will have to go and spend $50 elsewhere, and I don't want to spend $50 elsewhere. It's the principle of the thing. So anyway, if you all like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree with what I have to say, comment anyway. Feel free to share this content on this commentary and any other content I have, within your social networks. And as a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time and our age. And again, I need to urge each and every one of you to go ahead and reject corporate media, because they have nothing to offer. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm just saying just you can watch it with a critical eye. I do. I do. I watch the mainstream news network, and I'll watch it with a critical eye. I'll watch it, but I know what to filter out. So anyway, y'all have a great evening, and y'all will see me again fairly soon. So and all that. So I'm going to end this with a little bit of music, and y'all take care.